Yo, what's up, peace, y'all? I'm still digging into this mostly medieval history period. So I found a site, um, I found a podcast. Basically, this guy named Irvin um, has this podcast called Unspun, and they've been studying this same the Joseph Scaliger guy and others, and kind of studying in this same period for some time, it seems like, and they got a lot of information about it. I'm just pretty early into digging into this, into the episodes that are covering this stuff. Um, but so far in this particular episode, he's about to do a recap of basically all the things that they've kind of come to up to this point, and a lot of it is coinciding with things I've already been talking about. So I wanted to play this and then kind of go to a couple other sources to um, get a little bit further clarity or just show the connections with the information.
Before we move further, so why don't we give a little recap of what we've done in the prior episodes for the audience who hasn't caught the shows before and may not understand how history was faked, how the Dark Ages didn't happen, etc., and how the Jesuits were behind this faking of history. But why don't we give a little recap and then a little direction of what the audience can expect tonight?
Well, I think you might be able to treat on the faking of history a little bit more, just because my mind is so trained on the research that I've done for this show. So if you want to kind of freshen the audience up on that, I think that'd be helpful to me, just because I'm focused.
Well, you know what we're finding out, and just to give a brief rundown, is we had basically been piecing this together, and several of us, including Steve Outram and Jacob and myself and a couple other people, we've been getting the sense that more, and for me, it was in writing my Spies in Academic Clothing article, which made me realize how academic cells or intelligence cells operate and how they create this web, and then they cite each other to legitimize an official history. And while the public thinks that it's the writing about a single truth, it's really the writings of a single group influencing that truth. So you'll have, like, typically a cell is composed of 3 scholars, sometimes up to 5. I've seen, larger cells like what appears to be coming from, in my opinion, from Trine Day Publishers, where you have many operatives out of there. But so these cells, you'll have, like, let's say Gordon Wasson, Charles McLean Andrews from Yale, and Andrew Nevins, historian, all colluding in the background to tell an official story. And then you have multiple publications provided to the public that tell the official version, even though behind the scenes they're colluding. And then from there, what you have is cells citing other cells to keep that create a net or a web sort of this false history. So I had written about this and how all of the major books on MK Ultra were written by the intelligence community and faking that history. And then we started looking at archaeological sites and things like that. So then you think of, like, Stonehenge and how it was moved and aligned with the stars and basically created in the 1950s with a bunch of Disneyland stones, right? So then you start thinking, well, what about Greece? What about Athens? And then, of course, Fomenko addresses Athens. And then you think, well, Egypt, and, they claim Egypt is 5,000-6,000 years old. And of course, there's no evidence for that. And the history of these opinions varies by thousands of years from one scholar to the next. None of these scholars agree on the history. And describing the same kings, they can vary by 3,000 years in their description. So imagine, like, varying our current history and what we think we know by thousands of years just in the blink of an eye. And essentially that's what you can do. And to compensate for this, they created a false dark age, and they just inserted a 1,000-year period into history. And that was essentially as a distraction and to cover up what appears to be that the Inquisitions were much more current than we're told. They weren't like 1,000 years ago. They were more like 300-400 years ago. And so they rewrote history to cover that up and to cover up the history of the Dionysian mysteries and the Bacchanalia in Europe that were coinciding with Christianity, because apparently under the notion of Athena, the Virgin Mother Goddess, you have virgin children, virgin childbirths, which one apparently was Jesus and the other one apparently being Dionysus. So you had the Dionysian, Bacchus, Pan, plant, drug mysteries on the one side, that the former, what was Tartary in Rome, or somebody at that point attempted to shut it down and suppress the Dionysian side of things and remove it. Apparently, Christianity was really more about natural law. The Bible was not about religion. That may be a hard concept for people to get their mind around. But so all of the...
All right, real quick. So, two things that he just mentioned. Inserting 1,000-year period into history. And also the Inquisition not being as long ago as his current agreed upon history is trying to make it seem. Now, what would be the reason for that is so that you don't know about this. So that you don't know that you had black kings in Europe in the 15, 16, 1700s. And also, on the Bible being a book about natural law, I've been saying that for some time. And matter of fact, I'll just read something real quick. My bad. Hold on. This is from, let me see if I can find Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. This is kind of an aside. It is kind of a detour, but it's all good. This is from the Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. And this is just to give you an idea of, like, in your mystery schools and your secret societies, this is taught that Christianity, well, really any major religion, is rooted in the same principles. And so, and I'm going to prove that with this. So it says, the fundamental law of Freemasonry sets forth the true doctrine as to what the institution demands of a Freemason in reference to his religious belief. A Mason is obliged by his tenure to obey the moral law. And if he rightly understands the art, he will never be a stupid atheist nor an irreligious libertine. But though in ancient times, Masons were charged in every country to be of the religion of that country or nation, whatever it was. Which tells me that they understood that all these religions came from the same thing. And so it really doesn't matter what religion you join, because ultimately you understand the underlying principles of it. And I believe that this is still going on to this day. My theory or assertion of this is that most of your mega church pastors are actually Freemasons. Um, People like your T.D. Jakes and your Creflos and your Joel Osteens and people like that. And the reason I believe this is because if you really listen to the message, it's not really a religious message. It's really alchemy. What they're really teaching is alchemy. They're trying to, and they're teaching it to masses of people, so it has to be dumbed down. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. It's just the reality of, you're trying to teach a church of 10,000 people. Like, you can't really get too complex with, like, there's all kind of rites and rituals and different things. But they're basically just trying to teach the basics of, like, how to manifest things into your life that you want to have a better quality of life. Trying to teach people how to reshape the way you think to attract better things to yourself. So anyway, that was just a note on that. I'll continue.
This surrounding what appears to have been the Council of Trent and Joseph Scaliger, they rewrite the history from the 14th century through the 16th century, at least what we call that now, and rewrite everything. And they take about 200 years up to about 1699. They implement a new calendar then to erase this old history, to erase the history of Tartary and the Tartarian people. And the Tartary was essentially this massive empire based on natural law that ran from probably, it looks like, Scotland and the British Isles all the way to the Americas, and very possibly as far down south as the Incan Empire. And apparently this was all one massive history. And if you look at the time...
Okay. So this is where it gets interesting, okay? So we've talked about this a little bit in some previous videos. Obviously, the part about Scaliger and then rewriting history, right? We definitely talked about that, which is going to go to this book, Irish Wisdom. So I'll start right here. It says, the priests were employed in writing and concocting a false history. This is talking about the Jesuit priests, which is who they're talking about in the video. The Jesuits were the ones who were, or the men who were doing this were Jesuits, or closely tied with them. The priests were employed in writing and concocting a false history, one that would not contain any mention of the nature of her former greatness. This is talking about Ireland, or the achievements and discoveries for which the whole civilized world is indebted to her. So this book is about the ancient civilization of Ireland and its contribution to modern society and all the things that came out of it. That's going to talk about that more as it goes on. The very discoveries of the arts and sciences, credit for which discoveries would make any people great, were denied her in the new histories. And the credit has been given mainly to Greece. We've already talked about this. I talked about this in short in a past video that and kind of in detail how the history of Greece is completely falsified. They basically took the histories of other people and attributed it to Greece and attributed it to false people that never even existed. So you had men like Joseph Scaliger, and also you had, I did a video about another man named Salmasius with some others who created the Greek anthology, which is a completely made up text that is responsible for giving validity to Greek history and what you call classical history. And it was made up in the Middle Ages. So the history of these people was given to Greece. So when you're reading about Greek philosophers and astronomers and all these different, they never existed. They never existed. Yeah, I'm not even going to read that. That's fine. Here we find also the birthplace of mathematics, geometry, navigation, astronomy, medicine, chemistry, and the arts, which are commonly called Egyptian. British lexicographers and others taking their cue from them and giving the derivation of the word chemistry. Okay, this is not that important. Here it goes. Now, remember he called it Tartary. Now, I haven't had a chance to look into Tartary very much as of yet. So I don't know how accurate that is to call this civilization Tartary. I've been learning more and more about this civilization as different names. So I'm not sure exactly what they called themselves or what, but I basically what he said was a massive civilization that stretched all the way from Scotland and the British Isles all the way to the Americas. From Europe to America. Now, I've already proven, this right here is proof of the existence of the connection between Europe and America right here, the Inca Kings list, because you have Inca rulers, and then all of a sudden right here it switches to Charles V, who was the Holy Roman Emperor in Europe. So that already shows the connection there. And this is just driving it home even more, right? Their long voyages across the Atlantic Ocean to both North and South America is further presumptive evidence to confirm our belief in this fact. The voyages of those quote-unquote Phoenicians were not haphazard or dependent on a guess, meaning they knew exactly where they were going. The communication between Ireland and both Americas, North and South, was constant and sustained. The extensive and for that time highly advanced civilization which they established on both those continents amply warrants this belief. The remains of their works are in our own country, America, but much more so in Mexico, Yucatan, and South America, because if you don't know, the oldest pyramids on the earth are actually in Mexico. They're not in Egypt. The existence of both Sphinx and pyramidal remains in Yucatan is not due to mere coincidence or chance. Okay, so this is one source talking about the connection between Europe and the Americas, and that there was constant communication between them. In this video, they're saying that they were a part of the same empire. I'm going to go to another book called The Negro Rulers of Scotland and the British Isles. This is a book written by a black pastor, actually. I don't know if he was a pastor or not, but he had a doctorate in divinity from a seminary school. But he wrote a bunch of books about Black history in connection with the Bible. So let's see, which pages did I want from this? I think I saved them in here. Oh, I definitely did that wrong. Okay, it's cool. I think this is the right page. This is from a source he's citing in this book. This is a good book too. I have it in my my Google Drive. That link tree for the Google Drive, I believe it's on my page somewhere. The link, I'm gonna try to put it in like my bio or something like that. But it's totally free. There's a bunch of books in there. I gotta update it because I got some new books I gotta throw in there. But if you're interested, feel free, go in there and check them out. It says the actual fact that thousands of years ago, a Negroid race had penetrated Europe through Italy and France, leaving traces until the present day in the people of southern Italy, Sicily, Sardinia, southern and western France, and even in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland. An old Irish legend speaks of a dark-skinned giant race who settled in Ireland from Africa and Spain, who descended from Noah and Ham. The Bible mentions a giant Canaanite race who were of the lineage of Ham. These people who migrated from Canaan land to settle in Carthage, North Africa, became great sailors and colonized Spain, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and Britain. There was an old Scottish, Wales, and English legend of an African presence in their land who was not newcomers, but indigenous. They were tall and short, black skin, dark eyes, and long-headed people who spoke the African Hamitic language. It is believed that they migrated from northern, eastern, central Africa. I don't think that's quite accurate, so I won't even go there, but okay, that's really it on that. This is another. Oh, that's right. This dude is talking about a Viking king. The Viking kings who ruled throughout Europe. One was Thorhall the Black. The Scottish MacRitchie is an author. I think his name is up here somewhere, but I can't find it. MacRitchie described Thorhall as a tall, giant, black-skinned man with a foul mouth. MacRitchie went on to say that he hoped someday that Thorhall would be recognized for what he was, a black Viking who explored part of the coastline of what is now called the United States in his own ship nearly 500 years before Columbus. So this is letting you know that this was going on for a long time. Whatever this civilization was, or these groups of civilizations that were communicating with each other from Europe to the Americas, it went on for some time. And right now I'm focused on Europe. In the Google Drive, there's a few books about the civilizations here in the Americas, which I want to talk about eventually, but I need to focus on this first because my spirit is telling me that there's a lot of clarity to be had about what was going on this land up until what's looking like the 1800s, and even close to the 20th century. And that is clarity that is very, very much needed for us as Black people, because we don't know our history, and our history is being purposely shrouded in mystery and just straight up lies and rewriting of histories and the destruction of history. And so there's a lot of clarity that needs to be had so we can be more aware of who we are and more aware of where we are and more aware of who our enemies are and more aware of what we need to be doing to move into the future with more like surety, you know what I'm saying, being with more confidence. I don't think it's anything else on this. Let me just make sure.
And the arrival of Cortez and the Americas and that whole thing, and the sequestering of all of the Aztec or Mexica history under Montezuma and all of this stuff. We have the potential of a complete rewrite of history, and them sending out agents to make sure all of this stuff was suppressed everywhere. And then, so history is changed. That's a lot to try to cram into a couple of minutes there, but I hope I gave the...
Okay, that's cool. So yeah, like I said, the reason I'm making these videos is just for clarity's sake. It's not to, come down on anyone or anything. It's not to cause any division necessarily, unless division needs to be caused. But the main purpose is to bring clarity and to find the truth and the reality. Because right now we're not living in reality because we don't even know what reality is. Um, and you know, for our future generations to have like a fair chance at true freedom, like we have to get clarity on these things right now. Like we can't continue to pass down lies to our kids. Like I can't speak for nobody else, but the lies that I grew up believing, that I inherited from my parents and their parents before them, like that will stop with me. My children will experience true mental freedom, and my family will experience true mental freedom through me.